What's going on YouTube? Heathen Ryan back with another video. Today we are going to be checking out some Nerdstalgic. I almost got the name wrong. I'm going to be checking out the unfortunate problem with the Rings of Power, which I've seen quite a few videos on the Rings of Power, so I'm not really surprised that, you know, it's not going super well with it at all. But either way, I thought it'd be a fun video. Without further ado, let's jump in.
My friends, you bow to no one.
Okay. I'm assuming it's like that because they had to try to mute out the soundtrack as much as they could.
The Lord of the Rings movies and the masterwork they are based on are fantasy stories with simple themes, but simple can be deceptive. It took Tolkien 17 years of immense pains to write the books. Half a century later, Peter Jackson and his team brought Tolkien's world to the screen over several painstaking years of production. 2 decades after that, The Rings of Power looked at all the labor and love that came before it and cast it into the fire, leaving us—
Yeah, like, it's such he did such great work on the books, and then the movies themselves are fucking masterpieces. Who doesn't love them? And then, from what I've seen on The Rings of Power, it's just horrendous. It's fucking like some of the worst shit you could see. Just character assassination all over the fucking place.
To ask one not-so-simple question. What went wrong? We'll do our best to answer that question today, but before we do, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Nerdstalgic. When Amazon first acquired the rights to produce a Lord of the Rings television show in 2017, fans' reactions were already mixed. Initial reports indicated that the show would be a prequel series with a scope in line with Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I remember when it got announced that Amazon had bought it. At first, I was like, "Oh, that sounds pretty cool," but then I was like, "Wait, no, they're gonna fuck it up," because I heard that they weren't able to buy the actual full rights to it. And then I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe they can pull a hat trick or something, you know, something along those lines." And then it just turned out, oh, it's gonna be more like Game of Thrones. So it's like, okay, could be interesting. Maybe they'll actually, you know, do something right with it. And then I started seeing where some of the direction was going. I was like, okay, no, I'm out. Not even going to watch it. Not going to try to give it a chance. It just sounds horrible. And I'm glad I never gave it a chance.
Which was a red flag from the jump. While Game of Thrones was heralded as prestige fantasy TV, especially before its disastrous fall from grace in its final years on the air, its brand of somber political discourse—
To be fair, when it comes to Game of Thrones and like their last season and everything, it fell into the trap of TV shows that went on slightly too long. I remember I had a conversation with my mom about Game of Thrones because her and my brother were really into it, and I tried watching it. I couldn't finish it. My biggest issue with it was how they always cut from each character multiple times throughout the same episode. Like you'd be watching, say, Tyrion or something like that, or Jon. He'd do something big, or they'd do something big. And then let's get into a part and cut away. Okay. It'd be fine if it was like between 2 characters or whatever, but they swap perspectives like 3 or 4 times every episode. And it just got to the point where it's like, dude, I don't care about some of these characters because you don't give me enough time with them in a single episode. So I can't really connect with them.
And grounded fantasy isn't a fit for Tolkien's cozy fairy story about brotherly affection, good triumphing over evil, and ordinary people having an extraordinary impact on the world. Still, some held hope in their hearts with this new era of Rings content. After all, Amazon reportedly paid nearly $250 million for the rights to Lord of the Rings and committed to 5 seasons with a budget of around $100 to $150 million each. Surely, with this kind of money on the table, they had a solid plan on how to bring audiences back to Middle-earth, right? No. Amazon met with over 30 potential writers for the Lord of the Rings project after they had already cemented a deal with the Tolkien estate. Each one of these potential showrunners had their own wildly different ideas on how—
I love that. It's not even like, oh, we have a semi idea of what we kind of want to do, you know, leading into it, but We have like a semi idea of what we kind of want to do, but not really. No, it's full on no idea. We bought it. All right, what can we do now? We didn't even try to make a plan. Which is so fucking stupid.
How to approach a prequel, like the Rousseau brothers, who wanted an Aragorn show set in the Third Age. Ultimately,
that'd be cool.
Amazon went with first-time showrunners Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne, who promised a show about the forging of the Rings of Power.
Which could have been cool, but why would you go with the first-time showrunners on a project this big? Like, doing it for the first... Like, no, it makes no sense to choose on a project this fucking big, where they spent, I forget how many millions. It was like, was it like 50 million or something like that per episode, or maybe more? They spent tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars per episode. And it just feels like, from what I've seen of it, I forget who it was. It wasn't Nerdstalgic. It was a dude who fucking went on the Unsubscribed podcast. I'll put his name here if I remember. I watched some of his stuff on it, and he's just like, yeah, no, from what I've seen on his videos is, it just seems like the story itself was a secondary thought to the visuals, which is super fucking disappointing. And then also, I can't remember. I don't even remember if some of the showrunners were even actually fans of it. I thought I heard a rumor that they weren't even fucking fans of, Tolkien and whatnot, his work, which just seems incredibly fucking moronic to me.
Power, a topic covered by a single poem in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, about 20 pages in the Silmarillion, and under 4 minutes of Jackson's Fellowship. Essentially, Rings of Power was pitched as an extended fanfiction based loosely on Tolkien's work, and this here at the beginning is incredibly really where the problems started. Peter Jackson's adaptations of the Lord of the Rings are praised for their faithfulness to the source material. We've talked about that at length on this channel already, but it's an important thing to remember when we discuss Rings of Power. When Jackson, Philippa Boyens, and Fran Walsh
let's take a super short portion of the books, the movies, everything. Something that was barely mentioned. Let's make an entire fucking TV series out of it. Like, no, that makes no fucking sense. Maybe you could do like a first episode on it, do like a single episode based on it, and then get cut to the actual main story. But doing a full story based on that makes no sense.
Came together to create their beloved trilogy. It was never meant to be anything but a cinematic retelling of Tolkien's words as written. While they made some additions and edits, what we see on screen is more or less what we read on the page. The Hobbit trilogy strayed too far, added too much, and subsequently was much more maligned by general audiences. But
yeah, I do know that. I know The Hobbit wasn't nowhere near as liked compared to the actual trilogy. But, I mean, I didn't hate it. To be fair, I never read the Hobbit books. I didn't hate them, but they're not in the same, they're not in the same tier as the OG. The OG trumps them by a fucking mile.
At the very least, those movies had Tolkien's pre-written plot and clearly defined characters at its core. Rings of Power, on the other hand, is largely an invention by our showrunners and a stable of writers. While familiar characters make appearances in the Second Age, Tolkien left very few concrete references for what these people were doing or what they were like during this time. So the task fell on Amazon's team to extract meaning from a few short passages and spin a new tale out of whole cloth. Obviously, no one can tell a story in Tolkien's world quite like the man himself, but there have been solid attempts. Video games like War in the North or the Shadows of Mordor series tell
Dude, the Shadows of Mordor series was so fucking good. I love that game.
Books. However, those works
I don't want to play it again.
Stayed away from depicting more well-known characters in any depth. Rings of Power went in the opposite direction. They put a spotlight on characters we, as fans, know and love dearly. Unsurprisingly, fans are quite protective of these characters and are a little sensitive to change. The biggest example is Galadriel. Book readers
of course we're fucking, protective of them. It's the fact that we already know what they're like. We know their mannerisms. We know what they are. So when you take a character that is already known and people love and then try to change it for something, it's not going to fucking work out in your favor. I hate it. Don't do that. Makes no fucking sense.
Lovers came to know the Lady of Lothlorien as a stoic, elegant, imposing figure of impossible beauty and strength. While Morpeth Clark is certainly beautiful and talented, her version of Galadriel is written to be hot-headed and single-minded. Her preferred method of persuasion is a blade to the throat, and she's willing to put the lives of other elves on the line in pursuit of a harebrained theory that happens to prove true. Of course, characters can grow and change, especially...
Yes, they can grow and change. I'm not denying that. It's the fact that I can't.
Over thousands of years, and since the premiere of Season 2, Galadriel has had some moments of humility and grace, but this recharacterization remains a hard pill to swallow for fans, and it's only one drop in the ocean of reasons why Rings of Power feels so distinctly un-Tolkien. There's also the issue of the way the show looks. They've given an androgynous...
Yeah, that's another thing. And I'm assuming the elves are like supposed to be androgynous, which, I mean, look at the original movies, they aren't. Which, you know, it's a faithful recreation, but whatever. But from what I've seen from the other videos I watched, and just clips and shit from the show itself, it just does not feel like a Tolkien. It feels like some fucking person who's very vaguely aware of The Lord of the Rings, who then, you know, did some surface level research into it and then decided to write a fan fiction about it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work whatsoever.
Race of angelic beings, closely cropped haircuts like a bunch of military brats. Elven ears are weirdly thick and stout like hobbits, and the elves' costuming, along with everyone else.
Okay, yeah, I think the ears is what really throws me off, in the hair. The ears and hair, it's one of the things that, like, the elves kept throwing me off, and that's got to be one of them. It's the fact that the ears seem so fucking thick. It's like they tried doing practical effects, but the practical effects aren't nearly as good as the fucking original trilogy. So it just throws it off. And I'm used to them all having, like, long hair, not... I get they wanted to do, like, Game of Thrones, but that one fucking elf dude... Where is he? Him. He just looks like the fucking one dude from Game of Thrones. I mean, to be fair, I haven't watched this or Game of Thrones really, just short clips, and it just gives off too much like they're trying too hard to be Game of Thrones, despite the fact that it does not work in this universe.
Elven ears are weirdly thick and stout like hobbits, and the elves' costuming, along with everyone else's, misses the mark more often than not. Like the Hobbit films, Rings of Power tends to look too glossy and overproduced when compared to the Lord of the Rings movies, which take care to bring every...
Yeah. The Lord of the Rings, the actual original trilogy... God, I'm starting to sound like a fucking Star Wars fan when I'm a prequel fan. Either way, the original trilogy for Lord of the Rings seemed grounded, like I could actually be there. That is an issue I had with Hobbit and I have with Rings of Power. It just seems fake. Like, you can get beautiful shots as proven in the original from New Zealand. It can be beautiful. You can get beautiful ethereal shots without making everything look fake. And that's gotta be my biggest issue with this, is just they don't look real.
Visual aspect
so
of
it
the
just
world to life
it
in a
throws me
realistic way.
off.
Jackson's elves are appropriately ethereal, and everyone looks like they're wearing clothing instead of a costume. Another massive problem is that since the show lacks any true foundational source material, the story structure itself is wrong for Lord of the Rings. Both The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings are about small folk going on adventures to face down impossible odds. While both feature kings, wizards, and otherworldly creatures, the focus is on our unlikely heroes and the destination at the end of their journey. These are intimate and surprisingly basic plots. But because Rings of Power needed to be Braveheart, not Narnia, according to the showrunners, they needed to weave a much more
I don't even know what the
complex and
fuck
dark
that means.
narrative.
That's stupid.
And above all, they needed a hook to keep viewers coming back.
Let's make it Braveheart, not Narnia. Well, first off, I don't know what the fuck that means. It doesn't need to be either of those. It needs to be Lord of the Rings. And even then, being more like Narnia makes more sense considering, you know, Tolkien and... I feel bad, I don't remember who wrote Narnia. They were fucking friends. So I don't know what the fuck you mean by that.
As such, Season 1 is primarily concerned with Sauron's identity. We as viewers know he's lurking around somewhere, and the show's writers did their best to construct a compelling mystery. The problem is that the mystery isn't compelling at all. Even if you couldn't guess that Bargain Bin Aragorn was evil all along, the eventual resolution feels weak and confusing, and makes Galadriel look totally incompetent when she doesn't immediately reveal his identity to everyone else. This mystery also means we spend entirely too much time watching characters who aren't Sauron act strange and sinister for the benefit of the unseen audience behind the camera. The stranger, who is all but confirmed to be Gandalf, arrives on Middle-earth by way of cold fire and almost snuffs out the life of our proto-Hobbit characters several times by accident. Teenage Theo broods in dark corners and brands himself with the proverbial mark of the beast, and the unhinged Adar leads a legion of orcs while carrying the entire weight of the show on his back as the single. Even if you couldn't guess that Bargain Bin Aragorn was evil all along, the eventual resolution feels weak and confusing, and makes Galadriel look totally incompetent when she doesn't immediately reveal his identity to everyone else. This mystery also means we spend entirely too much time watching characters who aren't Sauron act strange and sinister for the benefit of the unseen audience.
No, this wasn't fucking needed.
The stranger, who is all but confirmed to be Gandalf.
Yeah, it's Gandalf, which is funny considering y'all couldn't buy the fucking rights to it.
Arrives on Middle-earth by way of cold fire and almost snuffs out the life of our proto-Hobbit characters several times.
Yeah, and then the fucking Hobbits, because yet again, you couldn't buy the fucking actual rights to the Hobbit name, so you can't use them, so they're... What is it, half-foots or something like that? I forget the actual name they fucking went with, but it's like, they're like a cousin... There's like a cousin species to the Hobbits. It's legally distinct Hobbits, pretty much.
Times by accident. Teenage Theo broods in dark corners and brands himself with the proverbial mark of the beast, and the unhinged Adar leads a legion of orcs while carrying the entire weight of the show on his back as the single most interesting character until he was unfortunately recast in Season 2. This mystery of identity might be right at home in Game of Thrones, but it's totally out of place in the universe of The Lord of the Rings, and the not-so-intriguing political intrigue they padded it with is equally misguided. It's all unnecessary at best and functionally useless at worst. With Season 2 well underway as of recording this video, it's safe to say that even though the mystery is over, the show's no better for it. Thanks to those early studio mandates, Rings of Power feels more like it's being created out of obligation than any real creative desire, because it is, and it's even more cynical in Season 2. Perhaps recognize—
Yeah, pretty much. It's, we paid the money for it, we have to make this. I mean, Amazon came out and said, yeah, no, we spent so much money on this. This has to be on just buying the rights and then the show itself, to where it has to be their highest viewed and grossing show ever to even attempt to make any fucking money back. Which is idiotic in and of itself. You don't need to do that. If you wanted to do something like that, then you get people who are super dedicated to it, and don't make it a TV show at that point. If you're going to spend that much money per episode, don't make it a TV show. Make it a movie. Also, you don't need to spend that fucking much money. You didn't get like super A-list actors for everyone, so it makes no sense.
Realizing that their show feels totally apart from the universe it's set in, the showrunners have gone back to the books this season in the most shallow way possible by bringing Tom Bombadil into the fray. The stranger is grabbed by Old Man Ironwood the same way the hobbits are grabbed by Old Man Willow, and Tom's lines in that scene are lifted directly from the book.
You should not be working. Eat earth. Dig deep.
But because Rings of Power is more serious and dour, Tom isn't allowed to be the merry spirit of the forest he's supposed to be. The dialogue that isn't ripped right from the book
why have him in the first place?
Exposition rather than his familiar lyrical riddles. Altogether, it feels like a
then why fucking bring him in at that point?
Of the show's consistent failure to build on Tolkien's world in any meaningful way.
Like, if it's a failure at this point, bring new people in to actually do it.
Forging of the Rings as a poem at the beginning of Fellowship. It's not a story that needs telling. It's not important.
No, it's,
to the
hey, this happened.
Messages Tolkien wanted to convey, and it certainly wasn't.
Like I said, if you want to fucking do something like this, if you want to make a video to explore or a show expanding on it a bit more, you don't make a full show about it, especially now that you're going into season 2 of it. What you should have done is to make a single episode about it. It's all you needed to do. Just a single episode, and it would have been infinitely better. Expand on it a bit more than you want, however much you want in the first episode, and have a completely separate plot somewhere else a little down the line. Don't need to make it about the actual forging.
It's supposed to be a Game of Thrones style epic TV series. The Lord of the Rings began with the forging of Tolkien's great stories. 3 movies were given to the fans, and then 3 more no one asked for, but they were all of them deceived, for a TV show was made. Deep in the offices of Amazon Studios, a group of executives and Tolkien estate representatives forged a new story, and into this story, they poured buckets of money, cynicism, and a fundamental misunderstanding of what made their source material so special. But hey, that's just how we feel. What do you think of the Rings of Power TV shows? Are you into the twist of Tolkien's work? Let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, subscribe to Nerdstalgic so you don't miss what we put out next.
Yeah. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments. I want to know what you guys think too. Make sure you actually check these guys out too. But no, I mean, if you're actually still here, you know what my fucking feelings are towards this. It's so fucking stupid. Let's move on to the outro. Well, that was Nerdstalgic, the unfortunate problem with the Rings of Power. Make sure you check them out, give their video a watch or like, subscribe to them, like support them. But I mean, before it even came out or production really ever started, other than, you know, the first little bits coming out, I wasn't excited for it. It didn't sound good to me. But yeah, leave a like if you enjoyed. Comment down below on what you did enjoy or didn't enjoy, or anything you'd want me to see and want me to check out. Subscribe if you want to continue seeing me. And until next time, take care of yourselves.